Jackson State's Jackson State's win over Hampton wasn't the prettiest game you'll ever see, but it was a game that showed me a lot about who this team will be in 2025. Oh yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at USA Today Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives, starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money using the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. You get 50% off your first year. We'll wrap up today's episode with a two-part, looking at a little bit of a SWAC whip around. We're going to take a look at the East in our final segment, in SWAC West in the beginning of our second segment, in our second segment. But this whole thing begins with a look at Jackson State, who is part of the SWAC East, of course. But I thought that their game against the Hampton Pirates really did show me a lot about who this team is, and it shows me they still have that championship culture. Now, understand this. If Jackson State was any other school, other than maybe South Carolina State or North Carolina Central, if they were any other school, their game against Hampton would not have showed me, or I wouldn't have had the same takeaway from their game against Hampton as I do for JSU. A lot of this is confirmation. I do already feel like Jackson State has a championship culture. But when I see how they responded in the fourth quarter, it confirms that they have a championship culture. Because Jackson State can be a dominant team. And here's the thing about dominant teams. Is they don't always know how to react to getting punched in the mouth late. They don't always know how to react when things get ugly. You know, that's how you get the front runner label placed on you, because we're looking at you like, when the going gets rough, what do you get? And in my opinion, Jackson State showed that when the going gets rough, they get going. So I thought that I wanted to highlight this for you because to me, this was something that needs to be pointed out. So let's go to the fourth quarter. There's a couple of reasons on why this was impressive, because it was all out of the norm of what I expected, at least. So in the fourth quarter, you start off with Jackson State. They punt the ball, go 3 and out in the fourth quarter. Well, actually, technically, the fourth quarter starts with Hampton having the ball. They get down to the 10-yard line and they end up, the 5-yard line, and they end up turning it over on downs. So you already see Hampton building some momentum. That was the best drive since the first drive of the game. And I could argue, outside of not scoring points, that was the best drive that Hampton had up to that point at all. But you see Hampton starting to put it together on offense. You see him starting to drive down the field. Isaiah Freeman starting to get a little bit of momentum. This was the game that I tried to watch, this and the FAMU Howard game, but this game kept stealing my attention. It was a much better game. It was a much, much, much better game. But anyway, when it comes to Jackson State versus Hampton, you saw Hampton building up their momentum at the beginning of the fourth quarter, though they didn't get any points out of it. And then Jackson State goes 3 and out. So they punt the ball right back to Hampton. Hampton scores a touchdown. This time they do complete the drive with points. 3 plays, 55 yards. They score in less than a minute. Who is the pressure on now? Who is the pressure on now? It's on Jackson State. So Jackson State gets the ball back, and it's a tie game. And not only is it a tie game, they haven't scored in a quarter, almost 2 quarters, or actually it has been 2 quarters, 30 minutes of action at this time. They haven't scored since mid-second quarter. So with everything coming up, your offense has been struggling. Your passing game hasn't been what you thought it would be. What are you going to do? Hampton just tied the game up. You go on a 12-play, 82-yard drive, 5 minutes and 3 seconds. That is a response to a very strong punch in the mouth. What do you do when you come back on defense? Because now you're up 7, but Hampton's building. So it's looking like we may go tit for tat. Pow, 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 pow. I'm talking about Coco Gauff, Naomi Osaka, all on the court, back and forth. But they don't. Because then Isaiah Freeman, who has been building up some steam, throws an interception. Or rather, I say Jackson State forced Isaiah Freeman into an interception. So this is how you respond. Hampton scores a touchdown. You go back and score a touchdown again. We're not going into this on a tie game. You score, I score, I'm back up 7. I get an interception. And now I have the opportunity to put the game away. And I was watching the TCU versus North Carolina game last night. And this feels like a moment that I don't know if the broadcasters did in the Jackson State versus Hampton game. But in this game, or in the TCU North Carolina game, you have the commentator who said, this feels like a moment where the defense has to show up. And what happens? One play, 75 yards, touchdown. Well, I don't know if this is what the commentator said in this game, because I think at that point I was listening to it with mute on, and I was trying to check out the FAMU game. I was, like I said, I was balancing. But Jackson State, after getting that interception, goes 76 yards, one play. 76 yards, one play. Touchdown. Up 14. Final score, 28-14. That's how you respond. See, my thing about Jackson State is you have to win in unconventional ways. If you are a championship team, you are not going to win the same way every single time. And if you become this one-dimensional team, I think that your chances of winning a championship do diminish. So when we talk about Jackson State, I was looking towards the pass game. I was looking at Shamar Savage, Nathan Rembert, Jonas Fortillion, Jacobian Morgan. These are the players that I was looking to. Well, Morgan had 15 for 30, 147 yards, no touchdowns on the day. He did have some solid runs, right? He had 53 rushing yards. But you look at the passing attack specifically, Fortillion, 5 for 43. He had a drop, I think maybe 2. You're looking at Nate Rembert, 4 catches, 31 yards. Shamar Savage, 1 for 7. I'm talking about who's going to stop these guys in the first game. They don't play that well. Well, that's okay, because you don't need them to play that well when you have Ahmad Miller. And Ahmad Miller had a 51-yard run that had me really diminishing his day because it came at the end of the first half. And I was like, that just felt like a product of circumstance. You just happened to catch him off guard, thinking you're going to throw a Hail Mary. And you ran it. And now, if he scored, I would have praised it. But he didn't score. He got down to the 1-yard line. And as impressive as it was, I was like, I don't know. But then he runs a 76-yard touchdown and tells me to shut up. So I shut up. I don't say nothing more. Right? Because at the end of the day, if you have that one run and that ends up boosting your yards per carry, I can talk about it situationally. But then you get a 76-yard run. It's not much to say. There's not much to say there because I'm not taking that away from you. He ends the day with 12 carries for 182 yards and 2 touchdowns. Almost was a third, but he ends the day with 2 touchdowns. And he was also co-offensive player of the year. When I look at Jackson State and I talk about championship culture and I talk about these things that feel like I'm being very premature, like how dare you crown them championship culture after one game? It's not because I'm crowning them championship culture after a full season and reinforcing that in that first game. But for me, your passing attack isn't living up to the hype week 1. That's going to happen at various times. At some point, your passing attack could not live up to the hype. If Jackson State can't pass the ball, can they win the game? Yes. If Jackson State can't run the ball, can they win the game? I'm still going to say yes because I still believe in the talent that's around there, though we haven't had to see it happen yet. I think it was more important that we see the running game be the engine for a matchup as opposed to the passing game because we already assume that the passing attack is going to get there. If this continues for weeks and weeks and weeks, then okay, then we'll change our tone. But I don't expect that to be the case. Can Jackson State win a game if the offense in general just isn't going? Yeah. Can they make plays on defense? Yeah. Can they make goal line stands? Yeah. When a team punches them in the mouth in the fourth quarter, can they respond when everything isn't going right? Yes. So at the end of the day, I saw a lot of things out of Jackson State that I was very happy with, that I felt like I could walk away and say championship teams do that. And Jackson State, to me, is still a championship team. That's all we were looking for out of week 1. And in my opinion, we got it. Now, as we push forward, we're going to do our whip around. We're going to move all the way around the conference, starting with the West Side. Y'all know what it is. Shout out to, never mind. Anyway, we're going to move on to the SWAC West, starting with that game. Let's go ahead and move forward, Locked on HBCU, and talk about the Labor Day Classic and some more. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Mazda offers more than safety. Yes, I know it's won more 2025 IIHS Top Safety Pick Awards than anyone else, but that's not all that they're about. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same, from metallic accents to hand-stitched leather, and a whole bunch more that's going to have you happy to drive one of their SUVs or one of their sedans. Doesn't matter. Whether it's a quick trip to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. So, it's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked on NFL, because the week of action is just a day away. Eagles, Cowboys kickoff tomorrow. Let's get it. But for right now, we're going to take a look at our SWAC whip around, starting with the SWAC West, specifically looking at the Labor Day Classic, because that was the matchup within the conference this week. You know, like you have Jackson State versus Hampton, Howard versus FAMU. You have, I guess you have Southern versus Valley, but overall, I mean, you have some big time games, but this was the matchup between two SWAC teams that everybody had their eye on. And with it being delayed 90 minutes, it ended up being the main event of the evening. Didn't end until midnight. That game went on forever, and Prairie View came out victorious. So salute to the rivals, you know. But specifically, salute to Cam Peters, because Cam Peters apparently called that last play. That's what Tremaine Jackson said. He says, talking about Cam, he ain't going to tell you that. He called it. He asked for it. And so since he won't, I'll tell you. He won this quarterback job. It wasn't given to him. So for this dude to call that last play, man, when we named him the starting quarterback 2 weeks ago, I knew what I was getting. This is honestly a big kahuna move. You got to salute that, because this is not just, he called the game-winning touchdown. That's pretty cool. No. He called the game-winning touchdown, understanding that this was the last opportunity that he had. He called the game-winning touchdown with, 2 seconds left on the clock? When they snapped the ball, there was 2 seconds left on the clock, I believe. He knew exactly where he was going to go before they called the play. He knew exactly where he was going to go when he snapped it, right? And then he threw a fantastic ball to get it there. That was, to me, I saw from the jump. I said, oh. Y'all remember that viral video? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no, 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 no. That's how I felt, because once I saw 9 get off the line, I said, he got him. And he ran, I think he was in the slot. He ran a corner, or he ran a post. And I said, he got him. He in trail position. It's over. It's over. But then Cam Peters throws the ball, and he throws the back shoulder. So while the Texas Southern defender is trying to gain ground, TV receiver is stopping, catches the ball, and it looks effortless. It was so, I ain't gonna lie, it was smooth, bro. It was so cool looking, but I kind of felt it coming. You know, I'll say this, they did have to do it 2 times, and I don't think they should have. The first time they scored a touchdown, it was called back because of offensive pass interference. And it was a pick play. Let's be very clear. It was a pick play. But most times you get away with that. But I don't know how it works. They be like, if you just act like you're running the route and it looks natural, they won't call it. Well, I thought it looked natural. It was obviously a rub. Like, everybody knows what the design of that play was. So I guess you can never be mad when you do get the call. But to me, I expected that to be passed up. I was like, When they showed the replay, I said, I'll take it though. Like, don't get twisted. I'll take it. But yeah, Cam Peters, man, that was a big kahuna play. So salute to him. And this game lived up to the trash talk. This game was really good. It was 14-14 for a long time. That safety and then this play right here that we just talked about, in my opinion, is what swung the game towards PV, because those are the only points they scored in the second half. And yeah, really good. For TSU, Chris Dishman says that he got out coached. And that's, to me, is kind of funny, because he talked about how coaching wasn't going to be the difference in this game, about how the TSU 11 was better than the PV 11. So when he says that, it was a really interesting callback to me to a comment he made earlier in the press conference, or at the press conference, that basically, you know, it's not going to come down to coaching. It's about the players. So one coaching decision I did question and second guess was the decision to not go for 2 at the end of the game, because when TSU scored, they were up 4. They kicked the field goal to go up 5, or the extra point to go up 5. As much as I love the number 5, there is no difference between being up 4 and being up 5. There's a big difference between being up 6 and being up 5, though. Because if you're up 6, it forces PV to have to make the extra point. So I did second guess it. I was like, you know what? The risk, in my opinion, it was worth it. Because if you don't get it, you're up 4, they still need to score a touchdown. You get it, you're up 6, they need to score a touchdown and make an extra point. But it's cool. Maybe those are the things that he's referencing. I don't know. But it was a really good game. 2 talented teams. I can't wait to see what they do the remainder of the season. UAPB, what is there to say? I mean, big loss to Texas Tech. Nothing to really say about that. I'm not going to say anything about that. Grambling did what they were supposed to do to an NAIA Langston. That's what they were supposed to do. I thought Zay Teasett had a very efficient game, 20 for 25, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, 3 touchdowns on the day. Grambling was able to put the backups in midway through the third quarter. Langston didn't score a touchdown until the fourth quarter. All right, like, this is what you're supposed to do. There's not much to say. I don't take much from P4 opponents or NAIA D2 opponents a lot of times, because I feel like you do what you're supposed to do to those teams, or you get done to what you're supposed to get done to. And unfortunately for Grambling, next week is their chance. They get to be the whipping boy. They get to go out there to Ohio State, and they going to take their licks. So that's what it is. Alcorn's game, to me, was genuinely embarrassing. To me, it was a black eye on the SWAC. And I'm not saying it's going to last forever, and I don't care if this comes off harsh. The truth of the matter is, the SWAC is looked at as candy. The SWAC is looked at as a cupcake conference. And when you lose to a team that no one else has lost to in nearly 3 calendar years, I'm talking about Northwestern hasn't won a game since November of 2022. I know teams that have won games since November of 2024. They haven't won a game since November of 2022. When you lose to a team like that, all it does is tell everybody that's what the SWAC's about. And that doesn't mean everybody gets painted with that same brush, but it does mean that the majority of the conference does. But yeah, Jackson State isn't going to be looked at as some weak team because Alcorn lost. It's not like everybody has that stain on them, but Bethune-Cookman does. If FAMU keeps playing the way they did on offense, they will. I think there's probably a handful of teams, maybe. I'm not even a handful. I'm talking about like a Ninja Turtle handful of teams that could break away from that. But for the most part, if you're not one of the top dogs, they're going to be viewing you like they view Alcorn, because Alcorn just lost to a team that hadn't won a game in over 1,000 days. Over 1,000 days without a win. Matter of fact, the coach came up afterwards and said, I haven't seen a campus, a team, a city in need of a victory this much. Never. Alcorn brought gallons of water to the desert. So that was a rough game. That to me is very rough. And we'll see what they do when they get in the SWAC play. They're going to have a lot of redemption to try to get. This week they play Alabama A&M, so we'll see if they're able to get that. But anyway, Southern, to wrap up the division, Jalen Woods going down does hurt. Jalen Woods going down is a tough blow. And, I didn't love everything I saw from Cam McCoy. I'll be interested to see if anything changes with the game plan with them. I want a more dink and dump. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. They have a really big game this week coming up. So we'll watch for that. But it was turnovers that did it to them. It was turnovers that really did it, that made this game close. And Alcorn is still trying to break out of their own, or not Alcorn, Mississippi Valley State is trying to break away from their own stigma. So right now, having a close game with Mississippi Valley State still looks bad. Even if coach trying to come in and change the culture, and this could be part of it, it's the first game we see you play. So it's kind of hard for me to sit here and say, oh, well, Mississippi Valley State is different now. Southern just doesn't look as good. But if they can run the ball as well as they did without turning the ball over, we can have a different conversation. And speaking of different conversations, let's have a different conversation about the SWAC East. We talked about the West, but now let's go to the East as we continue with Locked On HBCU. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Listen, why do you love FanDuel? I can tell you why I do, right? First off, they're very generous. $300 if you're new. Makes me want to be new every single week. But I love using FanDuel because it fits how I like to bet. Player props, building same game parlays, jumping in on live action, whatever it is, they have it all there for you. And that's my personal favorite part. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $300 back if it wins. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money, and most people can't name their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments. And when you don't have a full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. You want to manage your FanDuel earnings at Monarch Money. But it's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. So no more jumping from that app to that app or that site to that site. Just go to monarchmoney.com or use the Monarch Money app. Listen, maximize your investments today, whether you're investing by yourself or with your partner. Don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. We continue in our SWAC whip around with a look at the SWAC East. We'll do the same thing for the MEAC tomorrow, right? We'll probably have MEAC and Independence tomorrow. I don't know if we might do one game. We might do one segment of games to watch, but we are going to do our whip around. Now, mind you, things were different because we did miss Tuesday's episode. Hope you enjoyed your Labor Day. I did, so then I didn't come in the next day. But also I'm feeling a little bit better. If anybody cares, anybody cares about my well-being, feel a little bit better. Did just have to pause and get a nice little cough out, but y'all don't care that much. Let's talk about something you do care about, and that's Alabama State. Let's talk about Alabama State. That's good for my health, good for my well-being. And I want to bring up a quote from Andrew Body. We talked about the offense a lot, but with the whip around, it's another opportunity to talk about the team. Body says, fans can expect the greatest show on turf. We're not just a one-dimensional team. We can do everything, and we're not going to limit ourselves because we know we have a great defense on the other side of the ball. And that's what he said going into the week. Actually, I think he said that about a week and a half before the game. And I thought it was interesting that he came in and Alabama State immediately delivered. Alabama State immediately delivered on that. The whole great on the other side of the ball, that's still to be determined. But, that was an accurate description of the offense. And they look like they're a high-profile offense, high-powered offense that's going to come in and make a lot of noise in the SWAC. And they're a team that I will be watching very intently, not only today, or not only this weekend, but for the rest of the season. Um, Bethune-Cookman faced FIU, and they got thumped by Willie Simmons yet again. I don't think that's anything new, right? They lost to Willie the last 3 times he was at FAM, though they had got off to a nice start at first, but they lost to Willie the last 3 times. He comes in with an FIU squad that, quite frankly, we expected to win that game, whether it was Willie or not. So, nothing changed but the name on the chest, really. Then you look at Alabama A&M. I have high hopes for them. I think they're going to be a solid team. I think they'll probably be in that tier 2 of the conference, in my opinion. But a big loss to Arkansas means nothing to me. There's not anything to really talk about there. They lost to Arkansas, which I expected, which we all expected. And they lost big to Arkansas, which we all expected. That's the worst part about this part of the conversation this early, is that a lot of times these teams are playing money games. I'm not going to sit here and fake and act like I watched the money game. I'm not finna sit here and act like there's some cool takeaway. I did watch the Alabama State game, but that wasn't a P4 matchup. Anyway, then you go to Mississippi Valley State. We're going to end off with a bang with FAMU. Yay. Mississippi Valley State, they had 2 fumbles. They forced 2 fumbles, and that really kept them in the game. And it turned it from an 11-point deficit to a 2-point deficit. Because they turned one into a field goal and they turned another into a touchdown, but they weren't able to convert after that. So you really knocked down a lead off of those 2 fumbles. And I know you're going to go home kicking yourself that you went out at the 1-yard line on one, and that could have been a lead. You could have taken the lead if you had both of those back-to-back with touchdowns. One was returned for a touchdown. The other was out at the 1. You end up going backwards and kicking the field goal on that drive. But to me, in my opinion, this was a solid start to a season. If we're talking about building and we're talking about trying to make sure that we're creating a new culture at Valley, this was a good start. You want it to be more than Josh Brown. Of course, he was pretty much the whole offense passing and running, but I thought it was a good start, a really good start. Then lastly, FAMU. And for me, FAMU's terrible offensive performance was, the takeaway. I still do find myself impressed by RJ Johnson's resilience, but he's going to have to be more than resilient moving forward. He's going to have to be good. It's one thing to be resilient. It's another thing to be good. And I don't think he was that good on that day. I don't think that FAMU's offense was good on that day, running the ball either. So I'll be interested to see what they do moving forward. But what I will say is that I don't know how many games that are big time that FAMU can lose. I'm not saying James Colsey is on that hot seat, but I do think that if he loses enough games like the Howard game, we'll be having very tense conversations by the end of the season. But we're going to do this whole thing for the MEAC tomorrow. We're going to do a wraparound and probably look at 2 games other than our game of the week. The game of the week is Alabama State versus Southern, so that would be our Friday episode. But tomorrow, we'll just do a MEAC whip around. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.